Well, thank you for being here. I'm honored that you're here. I get a little bit, sometimes when I talk about this, I get a little bit sad, so I'm going to try to work through that. Thank you for being here. I'm honored to be here, but we're not here to talk about me. We're going to talk about this guy. He was always my hero. All my life growing up, my mother told me stories and so forth, but until I got into writing this story, I had no idea the magnitude of his reputation. He was a hero, he was a legend to a whole lot of people beyond me. I had no idea about this, and it was amazing as I started talking. I talked to people, and these people in El Paso that I got to, it was just these guys. He's a legend there. They're still talking about him right now. And it's just really been amazing to me. It's a story about an ordinary boy who grew up in an ordinary town to an ordinary family during the Depression, went to college, got out of college, took an ordinary job. What's most, I think, compelling about the story, though, is that all along the way he did such extraordinary things. And in the end, he transformed the lives and the culture of an entire generation of young people, young Latin or Hispanic men and their families and their descendants. And like I say, they still talk about him. And you look at the book, and it looks like a sports book, and I'm glad it does, or we wouldn't be standing here today. But people that have read it tell me it's a lot more than that. I've heard people say that it's obviously about civil rights. It's about football. It's about somebody I know really well thinks it's a love story. Pointing Mr. Reed over here. People have told me that it's a story of redemption. And I agree with all that. But for me, I think it's more a story of character and leadership. The underlying thread of the whole book is about character and leadership. And let me try to give you a feel for what I'm talking about. How many people have ever had a coach or a mentor who transformed their lives? Change it in a major way to the positive. Okay. Well, hold your hands up high to honor that person, whoever that was. How many of you have ever been a coach or a mentor and you transformed the lives of a group of young people? Thank you for your service. It's not something that goes easily. Let me give you an example of what we're talking about. Imagine for a minute that you're a coach of a high school football team and you load your kids up on a bus Thursday morning to take an all-day trip in the heat of September in an air-conditioned bus. And so you load these 26 or 28 immature, undisciplined Hispanic teenagers. Okay, spirited also is another adjective that probably goes in there. And this bus is rocking as you take off, and then as the day goes on, you're going to West Texas, and it slows down, and then all of a sudden you see the city limit sound of this little town, and the buzz starts picking back up. You go straight to the town center, and we've all been in this town center. It's a courthouse in the middle, the commercial establishments around. There's a beauty parlor, and there's a movie theater, and there's a drugstore too with a soda fountain, and there's a dry goods store, and there's a feed store, and there's a lawyer's office, and there's a diner. So they pull straight up this diner. You get out, tell the kids to stay in the bus. They're about jumping out of the windows, and you step out of the door of the bus, and in the door of the restaurant it says, "No dogs or Mexicans allowed." We've all seen this. We reserve the right to refuse service to anybody. It also had a sign for that. So what do? You're the leader. You're the coach. These guys don't know any difference. They've just kind of gone along with that. So what do? when that happens. This is not hypothetical. This is real world 1950 before the Civil Rights Act. Before it was illegal to discriminate, it was expected to discriminate in 1950. So I won't talk any more about that, but I'm going to back up a little bit for those who haven't read the book. Back up, Buryl Baty played, he was a great athlete. He played at Texas A&M, went off to war, came back to play at A&M against Oak Walker, Tom Landry, Darrell Royal, Bobby Lane. Glory days of the Southwest Conference. Had a really good career, not a very good team, but a really good career. Got drafted to play pro ball, decided to be a coach instead. He wanted to turn boys into men, build men out of boys. He took a job out of school, pretty closely after school, in El Paso, Texas. El Paso is a border town, and the Segundo Barrio is the border neighborhood of the border town. This is the ghetto of El Paso. These are the poorest of the poor. These kids, if they had a family that they stayed with, it was probably 8 or 10 stuck in a room, 3-room shack, stucco shacks, tenement apartments, no running water, many of them. They had to go down the hall to get water, take a shower. And this is the ghetto, no paved roads, etc. And he took it over, and he had to compete with drugs, gangs, apathy. These kids didn't go to school. They had no interest in school. They just went to school because that was the law, and they'd get, the police would pick them up if you were a truant. That's the only reason they were there. They were apathetic. They had no aspirations. They had no rights. They had no hope. 45 years later, they reflected on what he had done, his influence on them, and they named their stadium after him. So what happened between this hopeless group of people in that day is what you'll find out in the book. But so, like I say, when I started this, I had no idea what path it would take. I just thought I would write some ideas down. I'd been told some stories. I wanted to write some stuff down. Thought it'd be a good family legacy, and I would spend a few weekends on it and it'd be okay. Well, one thing led to another, and 8 years later, this gestation ended, and the baby came out. So it was a lot bigger than what I thought it was going to be. But like I say, I had no idea which way I was going to go with it. But as I learned about my dad, it became obvious what he had done, and he had done really profound things, historic things. And it didn't hit me until 5 or 6 years into it. I was zeroed in on what he was doing and everything, but one night about midnight, I thought, man, that's big. Excuse me. So put yourself in my shoes. You're doing a story about your dad or your mom, and you talk to some friends and relatives and get some ideas, but then you find some old players that played for him. And these guys tell you, and I probably talked to at least 50 former players, and these are all his kids. They're 85-year-old kids now, those who are left. So it's pretty amazing talking to these guys and all the stories they told about, the funny things and the stressful things and getting the Board of Education and all the things that went on. But the common thread was they said he fought for them. He gave them the foundation for success in their own lives. He gave them the foundation for raising their own kids. He inspired them every time he spoke. And every one of these guys, as they talked, they teared up. These are 85-year-old guys. How could you not be inspired? So now is the punchline. The punchline is that these guys, these poor, helpless kids that had no aspirations, no hope, no rights, they became priests, ministers, pharmacists. A lot of them went to Korean War, became military officers, law officers after they came back. They became CPAs, entrepreneurs, good citizens, leaders in their community, good dads, good parents. That's punchline one. Punchline two is their kids, the next level down, became scientists, professors, IBM executives, CPAs, doctors, lawyers, teachers, coaches, principals. You know, they followed suit. So it was really the second generation was affected more than the first generation. And that's what I'd call a transformation. Third punchline, which I'll quit, is that this is a hard one. Through all this, I was pretty much zeroed in on my dad. And what I realized, another hero or heroine came from it all. And that was the one who took a lot of the brunt of all this tragedy and so forth. And that's my mother. And that's where the redemption part of it comes into the book. So anyway, that's all I have to say. But if as Forrest Gump said, that's all I'm going to say about that. But, so if anybody has a question or a